Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am very excited for today's vlog because we are starting to develop our own car parts for the Audi S4. Now my buddy Cullen, he's coming over. He's a 3D engineer. He's bringing his scanner and we're going to be designing new car parts for the front bumper of the S4. We're going to start fog grille overlay as you would call it. We're going to scan the car, get the initial designs. We're going to take you guys through this process of designing our own car parts. Hopefully get your guys' input as well, but I'm super excited for this process. So what we need to do right now is move the Cayman out of the garage, and then we're going to get the Audi S4 in, and then hopefully by that time we'll have Cullen come over, explain the process to you guys about scanning it in further detail. He'll show us the instruments that he uses, and then we'll get going on it. We'll start her up, pull her out, and then bring the S4 in. Before we pull the car out, I just want to give a quick update on the garage. I know I've been documenting our build with the garage and the process of transforming it into our clubhouse, man cave, etc. So our newest addition to the garage that I'd love to show you guys is our home gym. We just installed this a couple weeks ago. So we have a rack, a wall rack that folds in. We got our plates up here. It's a body weight squat machine. Adriana loves using that one. Free weights, obviously yoga mat, and then all of our equipment is wall mounted. So it's very convenient for space. So when we need to pull both cars in, we still can. We can collapse the weight rack behind me, pull the Porsche in, and then pull the Audi right behind it. And then lastly, we just have a treadmill. We usually can watch some TV while we're on the treadmill, which has it's been awesome, guys. I love. That's just a quick update in the garage. Let's pull the Porsche out and get the Audi in here. So we got the Audi S4 pulled into the garage. Cullen is here with his equipment. He's going to go over with us what he brought and then what it's going to take to scan the front of the vehicle.
So what we're going to be doing today is a couple of different scans. We're going to be working around this shroud piece that Chris has, and we want to redesign it. It sounds like we're making it less aggressive is the goal, right? We're going to be shortening some areas of it, but in order to get a good starting point, we want to, one, establish our baseline of how it mates up to the car surface. So we're going to be scanning that area for reference. And then we're going to be scanning the existing piece itself and build a model off of that. So we have what it's going to look like and then also how it's going to attach to the car in our 3D software. And we'll also be able to kind of play around with almost like a preview of that. Of like, okay, do we want to shorten it by 1 inch or 2 inches? What looks good? And feel it out in software before we then take that model that we've made that we like, and we're going to prototype it via 3D printing, fit it up to the car, make sure everything looks good, and then from there we can decide if 3D printing makes sense to manufacture a bunch of them, or if we go a more traditional injection molding route. At that point we can have a couple of different options, and it'll depend on the geometry that we build off of it, as well as how the file ends up turning out. So at this point we've kind of got a direction that we're heading in, but we kind of got to play it by ear as we go, as these projects usually do.
Hopefully you have your input on some of the designs as well. So just let me know in the comments below when we start getting into this, if you guys think it looks better in a certain way. But Cullen right now is going to unbox all of his equipment that he brought. He's going to kind of show us his scanner, how this things work. And then you said you can hook it up to the TV as well.
Yeah, so we'll be able to see live scanning as it happens.
And then we'll unbox all of Cullen's equipment and go and scan the car.
So here we have some power cables, we have some data cables. There's not a ton going on in this case. It's a relatively simple system. It's called the GoScan Spark by Creaform. This is the actual scanner itself. So it's a small handheld type device. You've got several series of cameras here, and they all have a bunch of different jobs. So some of these cameras, the job is to locate where we are in 3D space. Some other of the cameras, the job is to generate a 3D mesh surface based on what we're seeing. So one is telling us where we are, one is telling us what we're looking at from a 3D geometry perspective. And then one of the cameras as well is responsible for taking color photographs that will then be stitched into the 3D model so that we have a color representation of the model as well. So we've got a bunch of different cameras doing a bunch of different things here. We also have the kind of key to this scanning system are these small reflective positioning targets. And what these targets do, you can kind of think of these as like a QR code or a barcode that the scanner knows. And these allow for kind of man-made reference points. This scanner can use these in combination with the curvature of the surface to align itself using those series of cameras I talked about that kind of tell us where we are in the scan. These are for where the curvature is kind of too ambiguous, if you will, to be able to lock on. So like if we were scanning the spokes of the wheel or the front end of the car, something that has a lot of character to it, the scanner is going to be able to lock on and stitch one frame of the scan, if you will, to the next one just based on like geometry between the two. But if we were to move to like the hood of the car, it's kind of ambiguous of where one piece would fit next to the other because it's such an open, slightly sloping surface. So that's where we're going to be using a higher density of these as kind of our man-made little islands to be able to locate ourselves. The setup for this is relatively straightforward. We're just plugging power and data into here, turning on the laptop. The real setup is going through this targeting process and making sure that we have enough references across the surface of the part. And of course, like we said, we're going to be hooking this up to the TV, so you're going to be able to see that pretty easily as I'm going through that process.
This equipment looks like it's probably pretty expensive. Any idea how much it costs if you were to try to buy this equipment on your own?
This particular model is one of like the mid to low end, we'll say, models that we have. And with like training and software and all that stuff, you're going to run about $65,000, I think. If you were to just get the scanner itself, which you kind of can't do that because you need the software and training, that's like around 35 or 40, I think. So I'm often driving around with things 10x the value of my car in the back of my car. It was very uncomfortable when I first started working there, but you just get desensitized to it pretty quick.
I'm sure. So we basically have the price of one brand new S4 in that box, plus on top of the equipment, you can buy GTI on top of it. So obviously very expensive equipment. This is why you definitely want to have the professionals be scanning it because they know what they're doing and not going to break it. So right now, Colin is going to get the targets, the scanner. Yeah. So there's the target symbols that we were briefly shown. He's going to place that all over the car so the camera can identify the position of the car and kind of get the angles. What I'm going to show you guys is, if you guys remember the last video, we did install the ECS front lip kit and we had the overlays. I did lose an overlay, guys. I was driving the very next day and all of a sudden it just popped off the front of the car. So I lost one. I did save one because we're going to kind of use that as a rough template because we're going to use that to scan it as well. So I'm going to grab it from the trunk. I'll show you guys that I think we have the right or left piece. I'm not sure, but we'll grab it. One of the two.
Well, the beauty of software is we'll be able to just mirror that. So we'll build the right piece, and then we can just flip it and build the exact left piece. So we only need one of these.
So I think this is the left side. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is the driver's side. I lost the passenger side. I was driving maybe 40 miles per hour, and all of a sudden I hear a pop off. And then I see in my rearview mirror the little black piece just flying and almost hit a Camry, but luckily did not hit anyone and just probably got demolished, and I wasn't going to stop for it. So here's the piece. This is going to go on the right side here. And what I was telling Colin earlier, I do like the design of these. The problem is I think they're a little bit aggressive for this front end. What we kind of want to do, the purpose of him scanning is to create a similar model, but to shorten it a little bit and not make it stand out as much, but still have the accent design piece on there. Have this on or off?
We're going to scan without first
as
a reference area, because I'm going to use this to make sure that the mating surface that we build on our new file, because we can't assume that this is manufactured perfectly. If we do, there could be issues, right? That could be a reason why, I'm not pointing any fingers, but it could be a reason why this popped off, is because this doesn't have a perfect fit up down there. So you might lose some surface area that the tape was supposed to stick to. So we're gonna just do that as a gut check, right? We could assume it, but that's never a good idea. Right. So we're gonna get this as the base point first to make sure that when we do scan this and fit it up, we can kind of virtually go in there and check what the fitment is inside of the, once it's installed. It's a really cool kind of virtual assembly application that I'll be able to show you guys in software. So we're gonna start scanning here though.
All right, we'll start scanning, boys.
All right, so I'm gonna be placing these little pieces of Scotch tape just as kind of like a protector for Chris's paint job. And the reason I'm doing this is the reflectors are fairly inert, but it's better to be safe than sorry. And if the cost of being safe is a couple of pieces of Scotch tape, why not, right? So I'm going to establish just kind of like a little bit of a home base with a few targets here. And you can see I obviously haven't put the targets yet, but we're putting down that tape. And that will allow us to kind of gauge how much we're gonna be able to scan as we go along this surface. Because remember, we don't need targets. The targets are just for areas where we need references that we don't have. So this will be a good starting point to see how far we can get without adding more targets. So think of this little cluster of 3 targets as like our home base. And now what I'll do is I'm gonna boot up the scanner. I know this isn't enough targets, I'm gonna have to add more, but this will give me a good sense of where I am, as well as what kind of different surface finishes I'm gonna be able to pick up with the camera settings. I'm gonna tweak them higher and lower, try to get the black and the white. These scanners being vision systems, the color of the surface can affect the ability of the scanner to see that surface. So you kind of have to play with some settings to be able to get it. And worst case scenario, I don't think we're gonna have to do this here. Worst case scenario, we have like a self-cleaning powder spray that we can throw on there, just to make it so that it's all white. And then we just have one camera setting to make sure it sees everything nicely. Because what you'll see with default settings right away, pretty much, is the white is gonna pop in right away, and the dark and the shinier surfaces might just not show up. Like I'll be waving it right over it, and it'll just be a hole in the scan. But that's part of this process, is kind of feeling it out in the beginning to see what settings we need to tweak, what targets we need to play around with, and that's kind of how it goes. It's a very feel it out kind of process. So that should be good. So now we can watch on the screen as I point the scanner here, and it should populate right in.
Oh wow, look at that.
So you see it's a very visual process.
Wow, okay, that's crazy.
And so now you see I'm kind of going around the maximum distance I can get while keeping those targets in view. And that's why everything's working fine. I haven't lost tracking or anything, but as I work my way across this hood, if we watch the TV screen, I'm sure I'm gonna lose tracking in a set right there. See, I lost tracking?
Yeah.
And it's gonna get confused and it might jump back to the wrong spot.
All right, so we can obviously see from the scanner that we have the image, the rough image of the S4 up on the TV on his computer, which is projecting up there. But just those few little dots that Cullen placed on the bumper was allowing the camera, the 3D scanner, to obtain this image. So, cool.
So just for ease of scanning, you saw we were kind of playing with different settings and working our way through the different colors on the car because we wanted the colors in those scans. To make our lives easier on this one, we don't need color for this one. We already have our color reference from the other scans. We're going to be spraying this white, kind of like a matte finish spray on the surface of the part. And this spray is actually cool. It's designed for 3D scanning. And what it actually will do is it will sublimate off the surface and clean itself. So we'll spray this on here. It'll be white for the duration of while we're working on it. And then this one lasts about 24 hours. It'll just just like dry ice sublimates and turns from a solid to a gas, same thing will happen here, and it'll just be totally clean in about 24 hours. So this is a really useful tool that I use for this a lot when the colors of the surface aren't exactly making it super easy to work with the scanner. So it's just like spray painting. We're just going to put a nice light even coat on here, making sure you can already see it turn in that matte white as it dries.
Oh yeah.
Dries pretty quick. And the nice thing as well is once that dries, it's a very solid surface. So it's not like just spraying like what people used to use in the past before this was invented, was like a foot powder type spray. And that's loose powder. It gets everywhere. It's kind of annoying to work with. This will actually be a solid surface that you won't be able to like get on your hands and stuff. So it helps a lot with the process.
Oh, cool.
It totally does. I mean, it smells a little bit. It's
Smells
not terrible.
It smells like Vicks Vapor Rub.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually just aerosolized Vicks that they charge a ridiculous amount for. That's military grade Vicks.
So Cullen just got done scanning the bumper, the piece, and the full front end of the car. We got all our files uploaded and ready. Cullen is going to do some polishing on his end, and he's going to tell us what our next step is moving forward with our piece.
So we're going to take this, like I was saying, we're going to take that scan data as a reference to build up our 3D model. That 3D model is going to drive the manufacturing process. So we're going to be able to first, like I said, we're going to build the model, check it up against the car to make sure it seems like it should fit virtually at least. That's the first challenge. Then if it fits virtually, our next challenge is manufacturing it. So our first step is going to be 3D printing it just to make sure we get a sample in our hand relatively cheaply and quickly to be able to make sure that it fits up to the car. Once we like that, then we'll run the numbers on, do we want to produce these through 3D printing? Do we want to go through a molding or thermal forming process? That's kind of open-ended at this point. But that 3D model is that first step and is going to guide us as we go through, and that's kind of how all the manufacturers communicate with 3D data to be able to quote off of and say it's going to be X dollars for X amount with this kind of a lead time. So getting that kicked off with this kind of 3D data is really valuable and allows us to save a lot of time and cost on the front end of just kind of, instead of guessing and checking with manufacturing stuff, it's all virtually done. It's a really quick process. So hopefully we'll get this done in the next couple days here. I'll be able to take screen grabs and video of my software that I'm going through working the process, so you'll kind of see how I'm building the skeleton of the model using the scan data and then verifying the accuracy. That's a really cool part. We'll do a color map where you'll see different shaded areas to say you're high or low or you're good to the scan. And from there, we'll kick it off to get the 3D print going. So we're going to follow up in the next couple of vlogs here. During this whole process, we're going to document the whole thing. Today was a fun day. We got to play with the $60,000 scanner on the Audi, so I'm super excited having you guys with us and going through this process. The ultimate end goal is definitely to design these pieces for you guys, for us to use, and see where it takes us. This is just a passion project at the moment, and I'm really happy to be doing this, and thank you to Cullen for coming by and taking his time to come out here. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next couple of videos. I'm pumped.